going to talk about the party, about West Point on the brink of the Civil War.
Hi there. My story is told in flashback. Fewer than 50 miles north of New York City sits arguably the most beautiful college campus in America, the United States Military Academy, better known as West Point. The Parting is a story based in fact, which enters the Victorian world of West Point during the period from August 1860 through the First Battle of Bull Run, Manassas, fought on July 21, 1861, just 11 months later, and is told against the backdrop of slavery, states' rights, the Democratic and Republican parties, the election of Abraham Lincoln, the secession of southern states, the fire eaters of the South and the abolitionists of the North, the election of Jefferson Davis, the resignation of Southern cadets and officers from the Academy, the posturings intended to avoid war that took place over this roughly 10-month period, and then the surrender of Fort Sumter that dashed all hopes for peace. On this first slide are two cadets. One is not in uniform because he did not graduate. He missed graduation by 2 weeks. His name, John Pelham, from Alabama, the most popular man in his class, the best horseman, the best swordsman, the best artillerist, but also the man with the most demerits. Nobody's perfect. He is pictured against a Confederate flag. Pictured next to him is Edmund Ned Kirby, his best friend. Actually, one of his best friends, because he had so many dear friends in this class. The first chapter begins 3 days before the First Battle of Bull Run, July 18, 1861. And there we see this incredible young man, John Pelham. He's in command. He's only been out of the academy for 3 months. He's in command of an artillery battery. An incredible responsibility, but he was that good. And he's with a part of the Confederate Army that's up in Winchester, Virginia. And Jefferson Davis has sent a telegram to General Johnston, who's in command of that army, and said, if there's any way you can get down to Manassas and help out General Beauregard, that would be great, because Irvin McDowell, with a much larger force, is about to make his move on Richmond. And the last chapter of the story is the actual battle of Bull Run, where these best friends, these characters that you've fallen in love with, face each other and try to kill each other. 7 years I spent in the military. First assignment, I report to the 101st Fort Campbell. 2 weeks later, I deploy to Vietnam. That was a wake-up call. I'm a forward observer with an infantry company in the rice paddies in the jungles as a butter bar second lieutenant. Is there anybody here who's not really sure why we call it the Long Gray Line? Okay, well, let me suggest I'm a part of it. And we've been wearing a uniform like this, a gray uniform, all these years. And so those of us that graduate become a part of this long gray line. You know, I think about cadets at the academy that will graduate this year. And, you know, it's not like they don't know what's coming. for the past 10, 15, 20 years, graduates of the academy are immediately put into harm's way. Then they get to come home, and then they get to go back into harm's way. And in our church not long ago, we bid goodbye to a full colonel who was going back to, I don't know if he was going to Iraq or Afghanistan, but it was his 7th short tour in combat. The first black cadet to graduate from West Point graduated in the class of 1877. So he would have started the academy in 1873, just 8 years after the Civil War. In this class of 2011 that's about to graduate next June, 24%, over 300 cadets will be minority grouped cadets. It would be over 100 years later that someone like Gail O'Toole, would you stand up? Gail is a class of 1982 graduate from West Point. And in her senior year, she was a cadet captain. She was a company commander, one of the highest ranks you can have at the academy. And she was captain of the tennis team, and that's probably why Jim married her. You know, I'm not sure what it was. How many of us have been to West Point? Did you enjoy the parade? Well, I just want you to know that cadets really don't enjoy parades. George Custer, who graduates at the very bottom of his class, as distinguished as Pelham was by the fact that he had the most demerits in his class, would rise to the level of being the highest ranking man in his class in terms of a major general, also in the cavalry, but for the Union cavalry. And he and his very close friend, Tom Rosser, would chase each other for 2 years up and down the Shenandoah trying to kill each other. But after the Civil War, they would come back together as friends. Someone asked me when they saw this photograph, if they look so prim and proper, you know, do cadets always have to be in uniform? And the answer is absolutely. Unless the tent flap is down, or if you're in the barracks, your door is shut, you have to be ready for inspection. And it's probably because of things like that that our friend John Pelham and probably George Custer might have been caught with something just not quite right. The brass shine, the shoes not quite right, you know, lint in the barrel of the musket or whatever it might be. And here you see, again, not too well, there are 6 young ladies in Victorian attire, which is full body armor. There's absolutely everything left to the imagination. And there are 6 young cadets, and so they would mingle, they would you know, get to know each other, maybe take a walk around campus with the chaperone not too far behind. But if there was a little magic there, a cadet might invite his lady friend, on a stroll of flirtation walk. I know it well. I can't remember exactly what happened there, but I know it well. It's a walk around the point, down along the Hudson. Beautiful, beautiful setting. It's about a quarter mile, maybe a little bit more. There was a great deal at stake If you invited someone to join you on a stroll along Flirtation Wall, you would come to this point that we see here barely. This is a rock face and this is a rock overhang, and there is the path, and that is what Jen mentioned we call Kissing Rock. And legend has it that if a cadet and his lady friend pass under that rock without embracing and kissing, the academy and the country will fall into ruin. And I think as I wrote in this book, thanks be to God, all have done their duty so far. And Jefferson Davis, not necessarily a model cadet. Robert E. Lee, still the only cadet to finish all 4 years at West Point without one demerit. I just want to remind you, in the context of the Civil War, 1 out of every 4 soldiers was killed. 1 out of every 4 West Pointers that served in command for the Union or the Confederacy. In the class of 1861, there was 65% casualties. When were Southern cadets allowed to return to the academy? Just 3 years after the war, in 1868, Southern cadets returned to the academy. All part of the healing process. Well, thank you for coming. I have enjoyed this.
I think I can speak
Great
for
comments.
all of us when I say thank you for your service in defending our freedom and our flag.
Thank you. Thank you. Amen.